I want to explore the paradigm of local maximums as I understand it. Life is a series of valleys and mountaintops. It's a series of paradigms. There are an infinite number of paradigms, an infinite number of locations. And within each paradigm, there is a hierarchy. There is a perception of forward motion. Climbing Mount Everest, the perception is going up. But whether it's climbing a corporate ladder, climbing a financial ladder, climbing Mount Everest, or maximizing the efficiency of attunement with a lover or partner, it is a local phenomena, meaning to be the very best partner for a given person is a process of seeing, understanding, empathizing, attuning, and succeeding in a unique pattern of relating. And at the very top of that pattern, we've optimized ourselves for that local situation, right? But there's a point when we get to the top of Mount Everest. There's a point when we explore as much as we possibly can of a given city, of a given person, of a specific paradigm. If you take the paradigm of Stoicism, for example, to stoically be present regardless of what else happens, right? There's a point where you are stoic, right? You've maximized for a grounded, somewhat indifference, passivity, a certain immunity. You don't react. You're present for what is. At the same moment, you are not dynamically responsive. You are not intensely and spontaneously emotional. Those are different paradigms that lead to different probability fields in the same or in different situations. Now, we climb a given mountaintop, be it the cultural rank system, right? If you're in a Western culture, your rank is determined by your efficiency, by your specialized competency, by your lack of emotionality, by your income, by your dependability, by how cool you are, meaning how unreactive you are to a given situation, and how in control you are. That's a local maximum. So when you get up at the top of that ladder, when you're a billionaire that doesn't react, that makes sardonic remarks without emotion, and that is highly competent and knows how things work, and people around you say, oh, that's a person, preferably a man, in a chauvinistic culture, but if a woman, then a precise masculine and in control, a very masculine type of woman that predicts this, preferably in the military. Well, when you reach the top of that, right, you're not optimized for empathy or vulnerability. You're not optimized for spontaneity, aliveness, right? You're optimized for the cultural ranking system. So it's a local maximum. And the thing to understand with these localities is that there's a valley between one locality and the next, right? what separates one from the other is this pattern of up and then down, and then up and then down. And before you can go from high ranking on the top of the mountain to high ranking on top of the other mountain, you have to enter the valley. You have to descend into incompetence, into low rank. Now, this helps explain why so many of us are narrow, are self-referential, refuse to leave the location of our competency, right? If I happen to be a champion bowler, then I want to engage with people as much as possible on a bowling alley, because there I've got rank. If I leave the bowling alley and enter a tennis court, I don't know anything, right? What's the best way to grip a racket? What's the best racket to buy? What's the game, right? Because that's a different local. That's a different area. So in order to grow, in order to expand, I need to descend from the area that I'm naturally competent in, that I have developed rank. Right? If it's a language, I need to descend from my language into the infancy of learning the first word of another language, and then another word. And that's the valley. So what I want to talk about is, how do you go, and when do you go, and why do you go from one locality that you've reached a high degree of competency towards and to another locality? And the first thing that I want to reference is the intersection of human needs. So we all, as human beings, have the need to survive, the need for security, the need for love and belonging, the need for self-esteem, the need to discover our talents, our gifts, to develop those, and the need to bring value into the world, and the need to become part of something, to serve something bigger than ourselves, to transcend the individual, the I-identity, to become part of something bigger than ourselves, riding the wave of abundance that comes from bringing our gifts to the world. So those are our needs. And what I would say is that we need to climb the best local area to a maximum height. We need to ascend to maximally and maximize our ascent to, it could be a family system, depending on our age, it could be a work environment, could be a specific relationship or a specific cult or culture. We need to ascend the environment that we find ourselves in, right? In most cases, right? Sometimes if you're coming of age as a Jew in Nazi Germany, you're not going to ascend there, right? So you get out. If you're in a sociopathic family system, ascending and becoming sociopathic is not necessarily the best choice, right? It may be the only choice. But in most cases, we need to ascend the system that we first find ourselves in as human beings, in a family, in a cult or culture. We need to ascend. And we need to maximize that ascent. Enough to develop reserves, enough to meet our needs, and meet our needs with some degree of abundance. We need to get reserves. Right? We need to store for the winter. We need to save up and put some money aside. We need to develop a rich support system. We need to learn how to take care of ourselves. We need to learn how to get a job, how to make money, how to protect ourselves in this situation and that situation from harm. So we need to climb our locality to maximize our ascent and gain reserves. Now, up at the top here, what we need to think about, what we need to understand is that while growth, while widening our experience, while developing, involves descending and then ascending another mountain, another local area. The valley is hungry, right? If you're a carpenter and you're being retrained as a computer coder, right? The moment you put down your hammer, your saw, and start tapping away, making endless numbers of mistakes, being confused, you have no value to anyone, right? You're not building a cabinet. You're not building a house. You're not repairing the siding. You're utterly useless. You can tap away, but it's like if you have an instructor, you'll probably be costing your instructor more of their time than you're saving them, right? Because you don't know what you're doing, and somebody has to explain it to you, right? So you're worthless. And, in a worthless state, your earning power may not be very high, maybe nothing, right? Maybe you're lucky, you find some person sponsoring you, but you're entering a vulnerable state. And if you do it without any reserves, you can collapse, meaning it's maybe better for you to stay being a carpenter until you can set a bit aside, until you build yourself a house, until you have some land, etc. And then descend into the valley of ignorance, into the valley of incompetence, of starting over. Now, the same is true philosophically, right? If you do not have competency, every culture or cult has a series of dogmas, a series of ideas, of patterns, of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And those series are what, they're the guide, they're the lighthouse. Come and do this, copy this, do this, right? And if you can't speak a language, if you can't develop and think within that paradigm, it may be premature to go off into an arena of new thought, new paradigms, right? Because in an area where you're doing something new, whether it's an oak tree, you plant an oak tree, it's a very small seedling. It's relatively a single step can destroy an oak tree when it's just 6 months old, right? It's a fragile thing. And your new identity is also a fragile thing. It's a pattern of tentative thoughts, feelings, words. It's a new way of thinking, right? It's not the norm. It's not consistent with the cult. We all think this, but you're developing this paradigm, this way of doing it. And it's vulnerable. It's fragile, it's vulnerable, it's uncertain. It doesn't have a lot of staying power. And so one of the habits that I think is useful to understand in life is there will be peaks and there will be valleys. And if we understand that, right, that the valleys follow the peak, in some cases, not because something is wrong, right? It may feel like that at the time. But if you just climbed up Mount Everest and stayed there for the rest of your life is not going to be as rich as it will be if you, as a mountain climber, explore the mountains of the world. If you, as a thinker, just climb up your mountaintop, your dogma, your religion, your cult, and defend it, and reiterate it, reaffirm it, defend it, reiterate it, right? Protect it against all other paradigms, all other ideas. It's a little bit like climbing up Everest and not coming down, right? You will have a richer mental life if you descend, having mastered the idea, the paradigm, the dogma, the religion, the cult or culture, and then letting it fall away, because no system, no thought, no mountain, no ladder is perfect, right? And because life is about breath, life is about growth. And to grow, we have to inhale, and then we have to exhale before we can inhale again. A little bit like these mountains and valleys, right? Because let's just say, for example, that there was a bridge from this mountain to this mountain, right? So we climb this mountain and we cross this bridge onto this mountain. Well, we haven't climbed this second mountain. In order to climb as a mountain climber, one must start at the bottom. You cannot be a mountain climber that is dropped off by helicopter on all the world's most challenging peaks, right? I dropped off on helicopter on Mount Everest. Then I went over to Mount Kilimanjaro and dropped off by helicopter there. The faces were very difficult, right? But I just was dropped off. Right? In order to climb, one must start at the bottom. In order to get to the bottom, one must descend from where one is. And it's very much like the journey of any humble thinker, right? A humble thinker is aware of the vastness of the unknown and of the incompleteness of all thoughts, right? All thoughts are a structure that is superimposed as an attempt to model reality, and it's imperfect, right? The one, what is, is infinitely more complex than the scaffolding of thought that we use to frame it, to perceive it, to understand it through the lens of a structure, through the lens of words and ideas that aren't reality. They are attempts to see, to understand reality. Right? And so it is usually the people at the top of a country, which is a system, of the justice system, which is a system, of an economic system, of a religious system. It is usually the people at the top who have ascended, right? Who understand more than anyone else that the system is incomplete, that the system is not working, right? You may start off as a loyal, devoted Catholic priest, but by the time you get to the Vatican, right, you've seen a lot of alarming things. Right? By the time you're a cardinal, you've descended into the muck, right? You've seen the dirty deals. You've questioned, why do poor people and poor country donate a higher percentage of their wages than rich people in rich countries? Why is the Catholic Church talking about the value of poverty while having billions of dollars? Why isn't it giving to the poor rather than taking from the poor? The thought crosses your mind. Why do we teach that homosexuality is evil, but so many of our priests are homosexual and pedophilic? And why do we talk about doing the right thing in God's name when we cover up our crimes, right? See, as an individual at the bottom of the mountain, as an aspirant, the mountain looks pure. It looks like up there is the answer to it all. It doesn't matter what it is, by the way. Right? If you're a police officer, you understand the dirty side of the law more than the average person. By the time you're a sergeant, a manager of a precinct, you've figured out that 10% of your cops are working with the criminals, are silencing the good people, right? Or using the computer system to hunt people down, right? There's been times you haven't stopped it because you didn't want to jeopardize your family, and you didn't talk about it because you know that the system protects the system, not the truth. And so, you don't want your boss calling you and telling you to shut up about it and stop ruining the reputation of the police just because there's 10% rotten apples. Just put it under the carpet. In other words, and you've seen the rich people with rich lawyers buy off this and do that, and poor minorities go to jail for little or nothing. So you at the top know the flaw of the system, while those climbing the mountain believe that it's a wonderful place. Right? If you're a guru, a workshop leader, you noticed your spiritual followers vying jealously for more of your attention to be seen as more and more beatific and surrendered. No, I surrendered more than they did, right? you realize the system is a joke at some level, right? Maybe they ought to go home and bring some food to the homeless, or at the very least, stop competing so much to look better than other people, to look more humble than other people, right? If you're a teacher, and even more if you're a principal or a regional principal, you realize how little the children's education actually matters. It's not the right subjects, they're not being taught in the right way, money is being allocated in other areas, the worst parents stop good things from happening because nobody wants to fight with them. You realize the system doesn't work. So that's the basis for the descent, right? So you project divinity, beauty, truth, and goodness on the mountain. I want to be a teacher. I want to be, right? And then you climb that mountain. And well, if you're going to be a teacher, why not be a principal? And if you're a principal, why not a regional principal? You're going to be a priest. Why not a bishop, a cardinal, a pope, right? But as you climb and reach the top of the system, that's when you really see just how creaky and dysfunctional it is. And that's the basis for the descent. You then descend, you let go, right? The Pope is not the Word of God. Priests, they're a mixed bag. There seem to be a few more pedophiles, right? 5% of Catholic priests, and let's not just pretend it's the Catholics. 5% pedophiles? Is that more than the average population, or is the average population would do the same thing if they had the chance, if they were viewed as being incapable of doing anything wrong? So maybe there's no difference between the priests and the rest of us other than opportunity. Right? And chastity or loyalty or nobility out of fear of getting caught is not the same as evolution, right? It's just fear of getting caught, right? And when you get higher up, your fear of getting caught in some ways goes down because you can change the rules to hide certain things. Right? You can use your overview to manipulate situations. So maybe you cling up at the top, right? And start dying. You stop growing, you start dying. Or maybe you are disillusioned and you let go of the mantle and you come into the valley. And then it is our nature to seek beauty, truth, and goodness, right? So we look for something else, right? Oh, Western religion is bad. Eastern religion, or positive thinking, or the divine woman, right? Men are bad. Let's try women. Well, they don't seem to be any better, right? Let's channeled entities. Right? Let's go out there and aspire to that. Like, I don't like who I am in this situation. I don't like who you are in this situation. So, we descend and then we ascend. And if we keep growing, it's a breath. We ascend, we descend. We can climb the mountain of efficiency, right? I walk into the kitchen, glance at the clock, I press the kettle, which starts heating up, and while it's doing that, I go to the fridge I drink this so that I'm more alive. Then I start doing these things and slicing bread and doing this so that by the time the kettle boils, then this is in this, and then I do this, and it's maximized. The morning is the breakfast is maximized. Climbed efficiency. Now I'm going to go to work, and I go this way and then that way, and then I go over this overpass, take the bus lane, go through this. I saved 37 seconds, right? The maximized way to work. My life is completely and totally efficient. Oh, you're so efficient, say people. Is that all there is? Efficient what? It's efficient so that you can be more efficient, right? It's a self-referential deity. What else is there? What about spontaneity? Right? You're not spontaneous. No, you're efficient. But maybe I want to be maximally spontaneous. Now, I think the best position from which to descend into a valley is a crest, right? The best time to move to another country is when you've made plenty of money, made plenty of friends, developed everything, so in your country. And you've got a sense of abundance, you've got a sense of accomplishment, you've got a sense of confidence. Now we're ready for something new. Let's go to another continent. Let's learn a new language, a new culture. Right? Let's descend from a position of strength. So that's an ideal. Let's inhale from a position of exhale. Let's exhale from a position of lots and lots of oxygen. I've descended into the valley. Now I've climbed the new mountain, right? And this also gets into a principle of scale, right? We can't exhale and then exhale 2 more breaths and then exhale 2 more breaths. We've got to inhale after an exhale, right? And so while our lungs have some limitations, things like you think of an investor who's become a billionaire. Well, let's say they became a hundredaire. They became a hundredaire, then they invested that into a company. Well, then they spend all their money, right? And they become a thousandaire, right? And then they invest all the thousands. If you want to be a millionaire, you don't get it from holding. You get it from investing time, money, energy, and now you're become a millionaire. Then you become a billionaire. But you can't go from a hundredaire to a billionaire. There's a process of, am I ready for this next step? Am I ready? If I am, then can I take the next step? Right? What do I need? What do I need in the way of reserves? Because you cannot enter the unknown. You cannot enter an area of incompetence from a position of weakness and no reserves. I go into a new town where I know nothing with $10, and then I bought a SIM card, but I didn't know that those SIM cards were a scam, and so now I have nothing, right? And that's the end of my trip, right? I don't know what to do, right? So it's important, I think, to understand this dynamic of life and growth, of scale and of progression, and to embrace the down steps as a way of beginning the next climb. To embrace the stillness as the basis for choosing the next activity, right? And I find these thoughts useful when exploring the paradigm of local maximums, and I'm curious about you. What mountains have you climbed? What valleys are you in? What are your guidelines? What are the instincts and ideas that you use to navigate between one breath and the next, between one mountain peak and the next?